I never thought grief could open the door for betrayal, but I was wrong. 2 years before my billionaire father passed away, he married Linda, a woman who walked into our lives dressed in diamonds and promises. She played the part of a loving wife so well that most people believed her. Not me. I saw the way her eyes lingered on his wealth, not his heart. When Dad's health began to fail, Linda tightened her grip, acting like she already owned everything. At his funeral, she stood before our family, announcing that the mansion, the companies, even the jet were hers now. People whispered, shocked by her boldness, but I couldn't help but smile. Because while she thought she had won, the truth was waiting like a loaded gun. She had no idea that all those assets she bragged about were never his to leave. They were mine. When my mother, Catherine, passed away, it felt like the world cracked beneath my feet. She wasn't just my mom, she was the glue that held everything together. My father, Richard, had always been a strong, commanding man, the kind of billionaire who built empires and intimidated boardrooms. But after her death, he was unrecognizable. His sharp suits hung loosely on him, his eyes hollow, his voice tired. I remember walking into his office one evening, the once bustling place silent, and finding him sitting alone at his desk, staring at a photo of her. "Dad," I whispered, "you have to eat something." He didn't even look at me. "What's the point, Sofia? She's gone. Everything else feels empty." I wanted to shake him, to remind him that he still had me, that the company and the fortune he built didn't vanish with her. But I also knew grief had a way of swallowing people whole. So I stepped up. At 24, I began shouldering responsibilities that weren't supposed to be mine yet, negotiating contracts, attending board meetings, keeping our mansion and estate from crumbling under the weight of his sorrow. People underestimated me, but I refused to let my mother's legacy dissolve. That's when Linda entered the picture. It started at a charity gala. Dad had reluctantly agreed to attend, mostly because I begged him to leave the house. Linda appeared like she had been rehearsing for the role. Elegant dress, practiced smile, an aura of sympathy that seemed to draw my father in instantly. She touched his arm when she spoke, leaned in just a little too close, laughed just a little too sweetly. I remember narrowing my eyes from across the table. Something about her performance rang false. It wasn't the way she looked at Dad, it was the way she looked at the mansion through the window, the way her eyes flickered when she overheard people whispering about his wealth. Still, Dad seemed lighter with her, and part of me wanted that for him. So I told myself, maybe I'm just being protective, maybe she really does care. But deep down, a voice inside whispered, "Sofia, this isn't love. This is strategy." Within months, she was around all the time. She brought him meals, convinced him to take short walks, filled the house with her perfume and her laughter. For a man broken by grief, it must have felt like salvation. For me, it felt like a stranger moving chess pieces on a board I was supposed to protect. One night, I confronted him in the library. "Dad, are you sure about her?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Sofia, she makes me feel alive again. You should be happy for me." "I want you happy," I replied. "But happiness and safety aren't always the same thing." He gave me a tired smile. "You sound just like your mother." I left the room with a pit in my stomach, because if I sounded like Mom, then I knew exactly what she would have said. Linda is dangerous. The mansion had always been more than just walls and marble floors. To me, it was my mother's dream. She designed the gardens, picked every chandelier, even chose the Italian tiles in the foyer. After she died, I made sure the property deed was transferred into my name. Not because I didn't trust my father, but because I wanted to protect the one place where her presence still lingered. So imagine my rage when Linda began treating it like her personal palace. At first, it was little things, new vases, curtains I hadn't approved, a few of her dresses hanging in the closet of the master bedroom. Fine. My father deserved companionship, I told myself. But soon, her perfume soaked into the hallways, her shoes lined the entryway, and her jewelry cluttered the bathroom counters. One afternoon, I came home from a board meeting and found workers carrying in massive boxes. "What's going on here?" I asked. Linda emerged from behind them, wearing a silk robe like she already owned the place. "Oh, Sophia," she cooed. "I thought it was time to refresh the living room. The old furniture was so dated." My jaw tightened. That furniture was chosen by my mother. And she tilted her head, smile sharp as glass. "Darling, it's just furniture. Don't be sentimental." I wanted to scream, but my father walked in at that moment, looking exhausted. "Please, Sophia," he said quietly, "just let it go." Let it go? This wasn't just about furniture. This was about erasing my mother one piece at a time. Weeks later, it escalated. Linda hosted a dinner party without even asking me. When I walked into the dining hall, I saw strangers, her friends, her colleagues drinking wine at my mother's table. They spoke about our home as if it were Linda's masterpiece. "Such a gorgeous estate," one woman gushed. "Linda, you've really made it your own." Linda's laugh was soft but deliberate. "Well, once you marry a man like Richard, the world opens up to you." I slammed my glass down on the table so hard the room fell silent. "Correction," I said, staring directly at her. "This house is not yours, Linda. It never was. It's mine." The air turned thick. Guests glanced nervously at each other. My father rubbed his temples, muttering, "Sophia, not tonight." But Linda just smiled sweetly. "Sweetheart," she said, her tone laced with poison, "when I married your father, it became ours. Don't be childish." Something inside me snapped. "Don't you ever call me that," I spat. "This isn't your playground. It's my mother's legacy, and I won't let you rewrite history." Her smile faltered for just a second, but then she recovered. "We'll see," she whispered, almost like a promise. That night, I lay awake in my room, listening to the echo of her words. "We'll see." It wasn't just a taunt, it was a declaration of war. And for the first time, I realized Linda didn't just want my father. She wanted everything. If Linda's arrival had shaken the balance of our home, her daughters completely shattered it. It started with Amanda, the older one, 26, loud and entitled. One evening, I pulled into the driveway and found a moving truck parked outside the mansion. Men carried in suitcases and boxes like an invasion force. I stepped out of my car, heels clicking against the stone path. "What is this?" I demanded. Amanda popped her head out from behind the movers, chewing gum and smirking. "Oh hey, Sophia. Didn't Dad tell you? I'm moving in." My stomach dropped. "Excuse me?" Linda appeared then, her hand resting delicately on my father's arm. "She needs a place, darling. It's only natural for family to live together." I stared at my father, desperate for him to speak up, but he just looked tired, beaten down. "It's only temporary," he muttered. "Temporary, my ass." Within days, Amanda had turned one of the guest wings into her personal suite, complete with a walk-in closet filled with designer clothes she hadn't paid for. She threw parties, blasting music until dawn, her friends parading through the hallways like they owned the place. Then came Chloe, the younger one. At 22, she was the picture of careless arrogance. She didn't ask permission to borrow things, she just took them. One morning, I walked outside to find my Lamborghini missing from the garage. Hours later, Chloe strolled back in, sunglasses on, tossing the keys onto the marble counter. "Don't worry," she said casually. "I filled up the tank." "How?" I clenched my fists. "That car is worth more than your entire future, Chloe. Touch it again without asking, and I'll have the locks changed." She laughed, flipping her hair. "Relax, Sophia. You have so many toys, you won't miss one." The audacity left me shaking. It wasn't just the car. They commandeered the pool, redecorated the cinema room, and claimed the kitchen as if I were a guest in my own home. They left clothes strewn over antique chairs, shoes on priceless rugs. One night, I tried to confront Linda directly. "This has gone too far," I told her. "Your daughters are not children. They're adults, freeloading off a house that doesn't belong to them." Linda sipped her wine slowly, never breaking eye contact. "They're family now, Sophia, and family takes care of each other." I snapped. "Family doesn't take without giving. Family doesn't trample over what isn't theirs." Her smile hardened into a sneer. "Maybe you should learn to share. It's not all about you anymore." That line echoed in my head long after I stormed off. Not all about me? The deed was in my name. The estate existed because of my mother. And yet, day by day, I felt myself being pushed further into the shadows while Linda and her daughters acted like royalty. It was no longer just Linda's presence I had to battle, it was the full invasion of her clan. And if I didn't draw the line soon, I knew they'd erase me completely. Through all the chaos, there was one constant in my life: Max. He was a golden retriever my mother, Catherine, had raised from a puppy. When she died, Max became more than a dog, he was a piece of her still walking the earth. His soft brown eyes reminded me of evenings we spent as a family, his gentle presence grounding me whenever the house felt colder without her laughter. But Linda and her daughters couldn't stand him. One evening, I returned home to hear raised voices in the living room. Max was cowering in the corner, his ears pinned back. Amanda was standing with her arms crossed, glaring at him. "This dog makes me uncomfortable," she announced. He growled at me. I dropped my bag and knelt beside Max, stroking his fur. "He doesn't growl unless he's provoked." "What did you do?" Amanda scoffed. "Nothing. He's just creepy. I don't feel safe with him here." Chloe chimed in, rolling her eyes dramatically. "Honestly, he smells. And he sheds all over the furniture. Maybe it's time we got rid of him." I shot to my feet, fury boiling in my chest. "Got rid of him?" I spat. "He's not an old couch you can throw out. He's family." Linda, of course, slithered into the conversation, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Sofia, sweetheart, maybe they have a point. Max is old. Perhaps it would be kinder to rehome him. Somewhere quieter, away from all the tension." I clenched my fists. "Over my dead body. Max stays here. He's not leaving this house." Linda's smile faltered, but her eyes narrowed. "You're being unreasonable. Think of your father's peace. He doesn't need the stress of an aggressive animal." "Don't you dare twist this," I shot back. "Max has never hurt anyone. You just want to erase every trace of my mother." For a moment, silence filled the room. The truth hung heavy in the air. Amanda looked away. Chloe fiddled with her phone, but Linda just smirked, as if I'd handed her a challenge she was eager to win. Later that night, I sat with my father in his study. Max curled at his feet as he always had. Dad stroked his head absent-mindedly, a ghost of a smile on his tired face. "She loved this dog," he murmured, his voice frail. "I see her every time I look at him." My throat tightened. "Then don't let them take him away." He sighed, weary and defeated. "I don't have the strength to fight them anymore, Sofia." That's when I realized it was up to me. Max wasn't just a pet, he was my mother's memory, my father's comfort, and my last connection to the family we once were. If I let Linda push him out, I'd be surrendering the last piece of my mother too. I kissed Max's head and whispered, "Don't worry, boy. They'll have to go through me first." And in that moment, I made myself a promise. I would protect him with everything I had. Because this wasn't just about a dog. This was about proving that Linda couldn't erase my mother or me from the life we built. The day my father was admitted into hospice, the air in the mansion changed. It wasn't filled with grief, it was filled with anticipation. I could feel it in the way Linda walked through the halls, chin lifted high, as if she were already the new lady of the empire. Amanda and Chloe lounged by the pool, sipping cocktails, laughing like the world hadn't just collapsed for me. I overheard them one night, huddled in the kitchen. Amanda whispered, "Once Richard passes, everything falls to Mom. We'll never have to worry again." Chloe giggled. "Finally? This place will really be ours." My blood turned to ice. I stepped out of the shadows. "You're wrong," I said coldly. Both of them froze, wide-eyed. "This house isn't yours, and it never will be." The next evening, I gathered them all in the living room. Linda sat on the velvet sofa, Amanda and Chloe perched beside her like smug princesses. I stood before them, heart pounding but voice steady. "We need to talk about what happens after Dad is gone," I began. Linda arched a brow. "We've already decided. We'll remain here. It's what Richard would want." I shook my head slowly. "No, things are gonna change. You've been living here for free, feeding off my father's kindness. That ends now." Amanda laughed. "What are you talking about? This is our home." I slammed a folder onto the coffee table, the property deeds, proof that everything was in my name. "No, it's mine, And here are the terms. After Dad passes, you either pay rent fair market value or you move out. I'm giving you 3 months. That's more generous than you deserve." The room went silent. Chloe's face twisted in outrage. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm dead serious," I shot back. 3 months. After that, if you're not paying, you're gone." Linda leaned forward, eyes glinting with venom. "How dare you? Your father promised me security. He wanted me here." I met her glare with ice. "Promises don't change legal documents. This house was never his to give. You've lived in luxury off his weakness. That ends now." For the first time, Linda's mask cracked. "You're heartless, Sofia. Doing this while your father is still alive?" I clenched my fists but kept my tone firm. "Heartless? Heartless is circling a dying man like vultures, waiting to pick his bones clean. I'm protecting what's mine and what my mother built." Amanda stood up, her voice shrill. "You think you can just throw us out? After everything we've done for your father?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Everything you've done? You partied in his house, disrespected his memory, and tried to get rid of his dog. Spare me your victim act." The silence that followed was suffocating. 3 pairs of eyes glared at me, but I didn't flinch. "Finally," I said, 3 months. That's your countdown. Use it wisely." And with that, I turned on my heel, Max padding faithfully behind me. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of control return. They thought I was bluffing. They thought I was weak, but I wasn't afraid of a fight anymore. The clock had started ticking. The day of my father's funeral was overcast, the sky heavy as though it mourned with me. Black cars lined the cemetery drive, and guests whispered in hushed tones, dressed in designer mourning clothes. Billionaire or not, my father was still a man loved by many, and the turnout was enormous. Business partners, journalists, distant relatives, even politicians. I stood near the casket, Max at my side, his head bowed as if he understood the weight of the moment. My chest ached, but I forced myself to stand tall. This was for Dad. Then Linda made her entrance. She wore a black gown that clung to her like it was made for the stage. A netted veil covered half her face, but I could see the gleam in her eyes, not grief, but triumph. She clutched Amanda and Chloe's hands dramatically, as though they were the grieving widows instead of me, the daughter who had lost everything. When the service ended, she cleared her throat and stepped onto the small podium meant for condolences. My heart froze. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. "Richard was not just my husband, he was my entire world. And though today we mourn his passing, we also honor his wishes. As his wife, I will carry forward his legacy and safeguard his estate, his mansion, his businesses, his fortune, all of it, entrusted to me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few heads turned toward me, searching for confirmation. I felt heat rising to my cheeks. How dare she? Amanda squeezed her mother's hand, smiling proudly. Chloe lifted her chin, basking in the attention. I stepped forward, heels clicking against the stone. "That's enough, Linda." My voice sliced through the murmurs. Linda looked down at me, feigning innocence. "Sofia, dear, don't interrupt. This is what your father wanted." I narrowed my eyes. What my father wanted, and what you imagine, are 2 very different things. She tilted her head, her voice syrupy. "Why don't you sit down, darling? This doesn't concern you." I took a deep breath, forcing a cold smile. "Doesn't concern me? You just laid claim to assets that were never Dad's to give. The mansion, the companies, even the jet you like to brag about. They're all in my name." A hush fell over the crowd. Cameras clicked. Journalists leaned forward eagerly. Linda's painted lips trembled for a split second before she laughed, brittle and sharp. "You're lying. Richard told me everything would pass to me." I stepped closer, lowering my voice but making sure everyone could hear. "Then you'll have no problem showing us the paperwork." "Oh wait, you can't, because it doesn't exist." Her face drained of color. Amanda hissed, "Mom, don't let her get away with this." Chloe clung to her arm, whispering frantically. But I didn't stop. "My father loved you, Linda. I won't deny that. But love doesn't rewrite contracts. Love doesn't erase deeds. And love certainly doesn't entitle you to what you never earned." Gasps, whispers, The sharp glare of camera flashes it all, swirled together as Linda's carefully crafted image began to crumble in front of everyone. I leaned in close enough so only she could hear. "Enjoy your moment, Linda. Because soon, the world will know the truth. And you'll have nothing." Her jaw clenched, eyes blazing with fury, but she said nothing. As I walked away from the podium, Max padded beside me, tail wagging slightly. For the first time since Dad's death, I felt stronger. Linda thought she had already won. But the real battle hadn't even begun. The funeral was only the beginning. Within 2 weeks, Linda struck back. A thick envelope arrived at my office, summons papers. She was suing me, claiming she was the rightful heir to my father's estate. I almost laughed when I read it, but the pit in my stomach told me this wouldn't be quick or easy. Linda wasn't just greedy, she was relentless. The day of the hearing, the courtroom buzzed like a hornet's nest. Reporters packed the benches, cameras waiting outside, the entire city eager to see a billionaire's empire torn apart. I walked in wearing a simple black suit, Max's collar charm tucked into my pocket for strength. Linda entered moments later, draped in designer black, Amanda and Chloe flanking her like bodyguards. She looked at me and smirked, as though she already saw victory written in the judge's eyes. The proceedings began. Her lawyer, a slick man in a $1,000 tie, rose first. "Your Honor, my client, Linda Harrington, was the lawful wife of the late Richard Harrington. He promised her security, a home, and his estate. Though the deeds may not yet reflect this, it is clear by his intent and their marriage vows that she is entitled to inherit his properties." I clenched my jaw. Intent? Marriage vows? That wasn't law, it was theater. My attorney stood next, calm and confident. He laid a thick folder on the bench. "Your Honor, the defense will demonstrate that the mansion, the private jet, and the majority of Richard Harrington's holdings were never legally his to give. They were transferred years ago into his daughter, Sofia Harrington's name, for safekeeping after the death of his first wife. All titles, deeds, and records confirm this." He handed the documents to the judge, who flipped through them carefully. The sound of pages turning was like thunder to me. Linda's face twitched. She leaned over to her lawyer, whispering furiously. Her attorney tried again. "Your Honor, my client has lived in the property, contributed to the household, and was promised stability. She deserves equitable compensation at the very least." That was it for me. I stood up. "With respect, Your Honor. May I speak?" The judge nodded. I faced the courtroom, my voice shaking at first but growing stronger with every word. My father was a good man, but he was broken after my mother's death. Linda saw that weakness and exploited it. She didn't build this home. She didn't invest in the company. She didn't even care for him in his final days the way she pretends now. She moved in, took advantage, and tried to erase every piece of my mother's legacy, including Max, the dog she wanted gone. And now she stands here demanding what was never hers. Gasps rippled through the room. Reporters scribbled furiously. Amanda shot to her feet. "That's a lie! We loved Richard." I turned on her. "Loved him? You threw parties in his house while he was dying. You stole cars, trashed rooms, treated him like a guest in his own home. Don't you dare lecture me about love." Chloe's face crumpled, tears streaking her mascara. "You're cruel. We lost him too." I swallowed hard, voice cracking with raw anger. "You lost a man you barely knew. I lost my father. Don't compare your greed to my grief." The courtroom fell silent. The judge cleared his throat, eyes moving from the papers to Linda. "Mrs. Harrington, do you have any legal documentation proving your claim?" Linda stood slowly, her composure slipping. "Richard told me. He told me it would all be mine. He promised." The judge's voice was firm. "Promises are not legally binding. Without deeds, contracts, or a will, there is no case." Linda's lawyer sank into his chair. Amanda covered her mouth, horrified. Chloe clutched her mother's arm. I felt my pulse hammering in my ears, but I couldn't stop. I stepped closer, my voice sharp as a blade. "You wanted everything, Linda. You thought you could push me out, erase my mother, and own an empire built on someone else's back. But you miscalculated. Because while you schemed, I protected. Every property, every share, every asset you wanted them? Too bad. They were mine all along." Linda's face twisted, her lips trembling. You ungrateful brat. I was the only one who cared for your father at the end. I snapped. Cared? You made his last months a battlefield. You tried to rip away the only comfort he had left, his dog, his memories. If that's your definition of care, then God help anyone who loves you. The judge slammed his gavel. Order! This court rules in favor of the defense. All claims made by Mrs. Harrington are denied. The estate legally belongs to Miss Sophia Harrington. For a moment, the world went still. Then the room erupted, reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing like lightning. Linda swayed on her feet, her veil slipping, lipstick smudged as tears streaked her cheeks. Amanda cursed under her breath. Chloe clung to her, sobbing. I stood tall, breathing hard, but victorious. As Linda stormed out, I called after her, my voice cutting through the chaos. Enjoy your headlines, Linda, because tomorrow, they'll all say the same thing. You lost. And for the first time in years, I felt like my mother was standing beside me, smiling through the storm. When the verdict came down, the war was over. In the days that followed, the mansion grew quieter. No more Amanda's thundering music, no more Chloe's heels clattering down the hallways, no more Linda's perfume clinging to every room. The silence felt strange at first, like standing in the wreckage after a storm, but slowly, it began to feel like peace. 2 weeks later, moving trucks pulled up at dawn. I watched from the balcony as Linda and her daughters packed their designer luggage, their faces pale, hollowed by humiliation. Reporters swarmed the gates, shouting questions that Linda ignored, hiding behind oversized sunglasses. Amanda muttered curses under her breath. Chloe wiped away tears. None of them dared look up at me. Max sat at my side, tail thumping against the marble. I scratched behind his ears. We did it, boy. We got our home back. He leaned into me, warm and steady, just like he had been through every fight. That evening, I walked through the mansion room by room. The furniture my mother picked still stood. The chandeliers she adored still sparkled. For the first time since her death, the house felt like hers again, like ours. I lit one of her favorite candles in the library, the vanilla scent filling the air, and whispered into the empty room. It's safe now, Mom. I kept my promise. Standing on the balcony as the sun dipped behind the horizon, I felt lighter than I had in years. They had tried to erase me, to strip away everything my family had built, but they failed, because the truth had always been mine. And now, so was the peace.